I'm going to make only very brief remarks. Obviously, this talk really resonates with me because, as Lynn pointed out, my own grandparents were part of that big wave of immigration. Can we advance the slides to the next? There we go. Okay. So this is I'll just make a few minutes of remarks. This appeared in the New York Times a week ago today, and it says that the title of the story is "Children of Poor Immigrants Rise Regardless of Where They Come From," a pattern that has persisted for a century. They tend to outperform children of similarly poor native-born Americans. And then the picture caption basically says these are immigrants arriving through Ellis Island in October of 1912. My family's both grandparents, grandparents came over during this great immigration. 2 grandparents from Poland, 2 from Russia. This is a picture of one side of the family, my paternal great-grandparents, Eva and Julius Kremsdorf, who lived in Częstochowa, Poland. This photo was taken in 1895, and it shows them with 7, I think, of their 10 children. One of the eldest was Mary, who would become my grandmother. She married Louis Lefkowitz in Częstochowa, and by the time they emigrated in 1904, they were married with 1 child, and she was pregnant with my father. Most of the family, he apparently was a fairly successful merchant there, but was not able to find good work in the United States. This is a family document which lists the ships on which various members of the family came over between 1880 and 1920. And as Lynn mentioned, the biggest immigration was in 1903 and 1904 when my grandparents came because of terrible pogroms that were sweeping through Europe and especially Poland. I would point out that the striving feature that Lynn referred to, I think, is a very important theme that we'll probably hear throughout the afternoon in many immigrant families. I graduated from the Bronx High School of Science, which was a public school for gifted and talented students in New York City. It was public. Anybody could attend, but there was a very rigorous examination that was required to gain entrance, and it was a real selection of the fittest. In my day, back in the 50s, about 80% of all the students there were Jewish families from Eastern Europe. I went back after I won the prize in 2012 to visit. 80% of the students are now Asian Americans. So again, a striving immigrant population attempting to make good sort of in the new world. I want to just focus for a second on one interesting tidbit that you don't hear a lot about and which characterized many of the immigrant Jewish families anyway, and for all I know this was common amongst other immigrant groups as well. But you had these large extended families living in the Northeast. In my case it was New York City, and many did not speak English. They were relatively poor. One grandfather was a tailor in my case, the other was a butcher, kosher butcher. And so family was extraordinarily important. And so many of these families formed formal cousins clubs, family organizations, whatever you want to call them. My family went one step further. They formed an actual society called the Associated Kremsdorf Descendants, the AKDs they call themselves. My uncle, my dad's brother, became a corporate attorney. He grew up a constitution. This is the first page of the Constitution. It had all kinds of formal things. One of the fun things, you can't read it here, but it says the voting age is 15. And I can tell you, as a child, we looked forward to being able to vote. Only in retrospect did I realize that there was really nothing ever to vote for. They put up a slate of offices, etc. It was all very serious, but very tongue-in-cheek, but we loved it. It met on the third Sunday of every month in a hall. There were 75 or 80 people there, cousins, aunts and uncle, grandparents, and if you were lucky, some of the great-grandparents. And there was a lot of schmoozing, as we say in Yiddish. There was a potluck dinner. There was the formal business meeting, and there was lots of discussion. There was entertainment by the grandchildren, awful, horrible piano and violin recitals, but tremendous family support, talk of who was getting into college, where were they going, etc., what books were they reading. And I really do think this kind of family support, which was very common, was something that was very, very meaningful. There's a movie, a Coen Brothers movie called Avalon. It's a very old movie. If you can find it, I recommend it. But it's about a family such as I'm describing, living in Baltimore. It's got a great plot, okay, but a subtext is just this kind of family organization, and they even show a couple of meetings. So this was a very common thing. Obviously, the great migration of Eastern European Jews was what gave me my start